Well, I'm back. It's been about 6 weeks since we got the package from SGC with cards that I sent to SGC. About 6 weeks later, another box shows up, this one from Beckett. So let's open up this box, see what we got back from Beckett, see if my predictions were at least close to accurate, and I will tell you how long it took, how much it cost, and give you a little bit of an evaluation of Beckett's slabs and entire grading process. So thanks for watching this video, and let's get started. All right, so I got the box open here, and hopefully that's not too loud with the microphone. I did cheat. I did open up this box and I peeked at the cards a little bit. But I'm going to start with an evaluation of the slabs. I actually like the Beckett slabs quite a bit. They just look very classy. I like their labels. I like the overall feel of the slabs. I think I like them a little bit better than SGC's slabs, to be honest. As far as I could tell so far, these didn't have any scratches in them like the SGC slabs did. So that's always a bonus. Like I said, it's been about 6 weeks since the cards came in from SGC. The total time, let me check my notes here. Recall that Beckett quoted a time of 45 days. Now at the time I thought, oh, 45 days action as in calendar days, but it's actually business days. So 45, that'd be about 9 weeks. It actually took closer to 60 business days, so about 3 weeks longer than what Beckett said, which is not great when it comes to customer service. If you tell your customers that it's going to take about 9 weeks to get the product sent in to them, graded and back, you would hope it would take about 9 weeks, but in this case, like I said, it took 3 weeks longer, so closer to 12 weeks, which is 33% longer amount of time. So that's a little bit disappointing, but they still beat PSA back. PSA still not back yet, so at least Beckett was faster than PSA. So what about the price? The all-in price, when you include shipping to Beckett and the grading and shipping back and insurance, was $20.41 per card, which is not that bad, really. As a customer, I'd like to see it less than that, but it is less than PSA. It's more than SGC. But overall, I think the value is pretty decent for $20.41 per card. One thing that I didn't do that in hindsight I regret a little bit is Beckett, if you pay a little bit extra per card for grading, you can get subgrades. Since this is a grading experiment where especially I wanted to see how closely I could predict the grades, it would have been helpful on these cards to get the subgrades to see if I was off, maybe where I was off and what to look for. And there's one card in particular, which you'll see here in a little bit, that I was way off and I still can't figure out where I was off. Now the same thing happened with SGC. I was way off on a couple cards and I looked at those cards after they came back and I was able to find where I was off. They had a couple creases on them, and if you watch my video of the cards that came back from SGC, that's part 2 of my card grading experiment. This is part 3. You'll see that from SGC, but there's one card, I'll show you a little bit later on, with Beckett that I was way off on the grade and I can't figure out where it was. But like I said, in hindsight, I wish I would have paid the extra couple bucks per card to get the subgrades. But overall, the $20.41 per card, not bad. If I did it again, I would pay the extra for the subgrades. Speaking of grades, let's get into the grades now and see how I did on my predictions. Now, on these, I didn't predict any 10s that I sent to Beckett. Since this is a grading experiment, I wanted to try to get a broad range of card grades, card conditions, anywhere from like 7 up to, or 7.5 up to maybe 9, 9.5. Now I predict the best that I predicted was 9. I was hoping that maybe I'd get some that would come back as 9.5. Maybe if I got really lucky, one might come back as a 10. But again, I didn't predict any 10s. So we'll start in with the ones that I got correct, because those are always the fun ones to start with. And interestingly enough, half of them, I sent 10 cards in, half of them came back and I got the grade perfect. So we're gonna start with those 5 that I got correct. All right, first off is this 1989 Topps Bazooka Darryl Strawberry. I predicted a 7 on this one because it did have slight fraying on all 4 corners and a very small divot on the back of the card that I saw. So I said, hey, this one's gonna be a 7, and it came back a 7. So I was 100% correct on that one. Next we have this 1997 Pinnacle. It's an Alex Rodriguez. It had very slightly worn corners. They were better than the Topps Bazooka Darryl Strawberry that we looked at. So I predicted an 8 on this card, and it did come back an 8. Now, one thing I want to point out is Beckett's the way they slab is a little bit different in that the cards are kind of inside of an inner, almost like an inner penny sleeve. At least that's what it looks like to me. So it does, what's nice is it does keep the cards from moving around a lot. Some of the other cards that I've seen that I've either purchased, the graded ones or the ones that came back from SGC, they almost seem to rattle a little bit inside. If you kind of do this, you can hear them. If you heard anything there, it was the plastic, which that's another kind of cool thing is Beckett sends all of their graded cards back in these plastic holders. Or like, you know, the plastic sleeves, which SGC didn't. So that was kind of cool. But anyway, back to the inner sleeve thing. On some of the cards, it seems like it gives the card almost a cloudy look to it. Maybe that's just my imagination or just the angle that the card is at. So I'm kind of, I kind of like that it's in this inner sleeve, but then part of me doesn't because it's just one more layer of plastic that you're viewing the card through. Overall, I do think it's nicer because the card's not rattling around inside of the holder, which could potentially make the card even get damaged inside the holder, which the entire point of having it graded and slabbed is that you're preserving the card. So that's a little side note. Now let's go on to the next card, which is this 1996 Fleer Ultra Call to the Hall Ryan Sandberg. I noticed before I sent it in a very, very slight scratch, and that one corner is just slightly bent when you look at the card from the back. From the front, it looks perfect, but from the back, the card is just the corner's got just the slightest bend to it. So I predicted an 8 on this one, and it came back an 8. Up next is a 1993 Hostess Jose Canseco. There was a very slight wear on just one corner and the edges looked a little bit worn, and I think that's because the back of the card is the dark blue color, and anytime you have one of these cards with a darker color, any type of wear on the edge will really pop and catch your attention, which isn't a good thing in that case. So I predicted an 8 on this one, and it did come back an 8. And then finally is this Topps Gallery. It's a 1997 Topps Gallery Manny Ramirez. There was just the slightest separation when I was looking at the card with the jeweler's loop on one corner. It looked like one of the corners was just slightly starting to separate a little bit. There was no fraying. There was definitely no rounding, no wear other than that. The corners on these Topps Gallery cards from 1997, I've got a lot of these, and they still look really sharp. But because of that very slight separation, I predicted a 9 on this, and it did come back a 9. This is one of those that I thought, maybe if the grader doesn't even notice that, it could possibly come back a 10, or at least a 9.5. But just to be safe, I predicted a 9, and it did come back as a 9. Okay, so those were the 5 cards that I got 100% correct, 50% perfection rate there. There were 3 other cards that I was only off by half a grade. Now it was half a grade down instead of up. All of my grades were all of my predictions were either right on or the card came back lower than what I had predicted. There were none that came back higher. I think on SGC, if I remember, there were 2 cards that came back actually higher than I had predicted, maybe even 3. But in the case of Beckett, again, I got 5 of them 100% correct, and then these 3 were off by just half a point. So that's 80%. 80% of my predictions here with Beckett were within a half a point of my prediction. The grade came back within half a point, which I think is really well. It's way better than SGC. SGC, 45% of my predictions came back within half a point, either right on or within half a point, which isn't very good. Beckett, 80%, much better. So let's look at the cards that came back only half a point off. First is this 1995 Flair Hot Numbers Greg Maddux. I noticed an extremely small scratch on the card. I don't even remember where it was, but in my notes, I just put extremely small scratch. The centering was perfect. The corners were perfect. It was just that one surface issue. So I predicted a 9. It came back an 8.5. So again, this is where it would have been nice if I had ponied up the extra cash and got the subgrades, because then I could tell, like, did they knock it way down for the surface, down to like an 8 on the surface because of that small scratch? Or maybe did they notice something in the corners or the centering that I didn't notice? But I predicted a 9, it came back an 8.5. Next is this one, a 1993 triple play. And I don't know what it is about the 93 triple play. Maybe it was because I was 14 years old when it came out. I really like that set. It's kind of a chintzy set. It's kind of cheap, but it had some cool cards, I thought, and I liked the design. Again, maybe it's a nostalgia thing, but anyway, this one is a 1993 triple play. It's a Frank Thomas, and it's the one that's got him as like a little leaguer on it. In my notes, let's see, I had predicted a 9. I had one corner that was just very slightly angled in. Again, not even frayed, very similar to the Manny Ramirez. Just a very slight problem with one corner, and so I predicted a 9. It came back an 8.5. Again, if I had the subgrades, I would know where it came, what lowered it down, but I don't have the subgrades, so still within a half a point on the grade, not too bad. The last of the 3 cards that I was only off by half a grade, this is a 1992 Topps Kids. This is another set that I just liked as a kid. I liked the kind of the cartoon feel to it. Other people maybe didn't like it very much. I don't know. I don't even know how long Topps did the Topps Kids, but this is the Ozzie Smith. And I had noticed very minor wear on both top corners. But it was so small, I thought maybe it could get a 9. Because one of them, you had to look under magnification to notice the wear. And again, I was trying to grade as harshly as possible in my own mind. So I predicted a 9 on this one, again, hoping maybe it'll come back a 9.5, but it actually came back the other way as an 8.5. So that's the third of the 3. So we're 8 cards of the way through, 80% of the way through, and I'm doing pretty good. Let's see what those last 2 cards look like. Okay, this one is a 1993 Fleer, but it's the Fruit of the Loom kind of subset or, marketing set, and it's the Cal Ripken Jr. Now, I had noticed that it was a little bit off-center, but nothing too terribly off-center, and that there was a corner that could be considered slightly worn on there, but overall I thought it would come back a 9. Now, the interesting thing is I looked over this card again when it came back, and I agree with my notes. I do think it should be a 9. So this is one where it would be nice if I had those subgrades to know, why did it get bumped all the way down to a 7.5, which is 1.5 points lower than my prediction. Now, the one thing could be that the focus on the picture seems to be slightly off, but it's not really that bad. And considering the corners are close to a 10, and the surface is close to a 10, and the edges should be close to a 10, and the centering I pegged at a 9. I thought, well, what in the world brought it down to a 7.5? Honestly, I don't know. I looked at it again very closely. I didn't find any additional scratches or creases or anything else. This is just one of those mysteries where my other grades, my other predictions were right on. And I looked at this one at the same time. So you'd think I'm the same person. I'm looking at the cards at the same time. I should have noticed whatever, brought it down to a 7.5, but I didn't. So obviously the grader at Beckett saw something that I didn't see. It would be nice to know what that was, but I don't know. So this is one card out of the 10 that was down 1.5 points. And then the final card, let's look at that one because that one is actually worse. Okay, so this is that final card, and right away what pops out is that it got a 5, which is a horrible grade. Now, unless you're sending in a card from the 1950s and it's a Hall of Famer, then I'd take a 5 all day long. But this is a 1991 Topps Toys R Us Rookies, David Justice. When I was sending this card in to be graded and I looked closely at it, I did notice the edges appeared to be slightly worn. To the naked eye, it looks fine, but under magnification, because the edge of the card is black, the border's black, any type of wear on the edge is going to really stand out. So I did notice that the edges appeared slightly worn. And then there was what I would say barely visible surface scratches on parts of the card. They weren't deep scratches, and you had to hold the card at a certain angle. Even now, as I hold the card, I can't see the scratches because they were very, very small surface scratches. I don't know why this came back a 5, and this is the one that I really, really wish I would have gotten subgrades on, because it would have been nice to know the centering is near perfect. The corners look great. So for it to get a 5, they had to notice some kind of crease or something. And since I got the card back, I looked at it with a jeweler's loop. I didn't notice a crease. I can't figure out why it was a 5, but I predicted a 9, and so I was 4 whole points off. Again, if I send cards to Beckett again, I will pay for the subgrades just so that I know if there are cards like this that come back and they're way off. So that would be one recommendation I would have if you're thinking about sending cards to Beckett. Maybe pay the extra couple bucks and get those subgrades. So when the card comes back, if you've got questions, you know where the grade came from. Okay, so what are my final thoughts? What's my overall impression? So far, Beckett compared to SGC, because those are the ones that I've gotten back. Overall, I like the Beckett slabs better. I think they look nicer. Both SGC and Beckett slabs feel nice and hefty. I kind of like the inner sleeve that the Beckett cards have. Overall, I don't think it detracts from the look of the card, but it definitely holds the card in place better. And then you don't have to have the card, held in by the plastic. It's the sleeve itself that keeps the card from moving around, and it's not going to rattle around inside. I think the overall value, $20.41 per card, all in price, was not too bad. The turnaround time could have been a little bit better because it took 3 weeks longer than they said it was going to take. But I kind of knew going into the process that all 3 companies were going to take longer than they said they were going to take. And so far that has proven to be true. It just, for whatever reason, it takes them longer than they say it's going to take them. Now, what about the overall consistency of the grading? I think Beckett was far better than SGC. SGC had some grades that were just wacky. They didn't make any sense to me. There was the Greg Maddux rookie card that was 2 points off, but in my favor, and it just didn't make any sense. With Beckett, I had 80% of the cards came back either right on to what I had predicted or just half a grade off. There was just really that one card, that Dave Justice Toys R Us Rookies card, that it just didn't make any sense why they gave it a 5. I have no idea. There must have been something that they noticed, a small crease somewhere that I haven't been able to figure out. But overall, I think the quality of the grading and the consistency of the grading with Beckett was much better. Now, I will say this too. As a kid collecting baseball cards in the 1990s, everybody knew Beckett's name. Beckett Baseball Card Monthly was the magazine that you would get in your mailbox every month, and you'd run there and open it up. I still have a few of the Becketts from when I was a kid. So I'm kind of rooting for Beckett a little bit to reclaim more of the market share. I know that PSA has gotten huge, over the last 10, 15 years, and Beckett hasn't always made the best business decisions, but I'd really like to see Beckett kind of rebound and reclaim more of that market share. And I think I'm going to make a video a little bit. I've got some ideas churning in my head, almost like suggestions to each of the grading companies, what they could do to really make everything better for the hobby in general, for collectors, and for themselves, because it's a business. They're trying to make money. They're providing a service to customers, and I'd really like to see Beckett provide some better customer service. I think their slabs are great, and at least right now, the consistency of the grading is good. In the past, the Beckett grading has not been all that consistent and hasn't been all that great. That's part of the problem. PSA has been much more consistent over the years, and SGC has been much more consistent over the years. But overall, I'm happy with the Beckett product. I know that value-wise, they don't hold the value, or they don't have the value as much as PSA. So say a PSA 9 is going to sell for more than a Beckett 9, which is kind of unfortunate, because the Beckett 9, at least right now, the consistency of the grade seems to be there, the quality of the grade seems to be there, but it's just PSA has the big name recognition, and so it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy where everyone thinks that the PSA is worth more, and that makes the PSA worth more because the demand is higher. But that's my final thought, is that I'd really like to see Beckett kind of come back and make a rebound and be able to take some of that market share back from PSA and provide collectors with a good quality service. Well, that was it for part 3 of my grading experiment. Again, part 1, I sent the cards in, I gave all my predicted grades. So if you haven't watched that video, go back and watch part 1. You'll be able to see all the cards that I sent in. Part 2 was the cards coming back from SGC, and now this part 3 was the cards coming back from Beckett. So stay tuned. Hopefully PSA will get their act together and they will be able to get some cards back to me. And then I'll make part 4 with the PSA. So thank you for watching. Check out my other videos. And if you haven't, subscribe to this channel for more videos like this. Again, thanks for watching, and God bless.
Thank you.